If you're an executive coach providing remarkable service to remarkable leaders, then you'll know how important a positive can-do mindset is for your client's success. So when a new client comes to you talking about feeling not good enough and self-doubt, you might assume that that's a mindset issue. You might decide to teach them affirmations so they can tell themselves in the mirror how great and wonderful they are. You might decide to teach them to replace a negative thought with a positive thought. And while these are excellent coaching techniques, they don't work for imposter syndrome, and sometimes they can even make things worse. Imposter syndrome is the secret feeling of being a fraud when you're not, and the fear of being found out. And it affects 70% of high achievers at some point in their careers, men and women equally. I'm Tara Halliday, the Imposter Syndrome Specialist and best-selling author of Unmasking, the Coach's Guide to Imposter Syndrome. Each year I speak to hundreds of executives, one-to-one, about their imposter syndrome. And here's why affirmations won't work. Imagine that your mind is like an iceberg. There's a small part above the surface, and that's the conscious mind, your active thoughts. And then below the surface, there's much more of the iceberg, and these are your unconscious thoughts and beliefs. Mindset works on the level of the surface, bringing up from just below the surface in the unconscious different perspectives and insights, and bringing them to consciousness so they can be acted upon. Fabulous techniques. And then affirmations are repeating those new views and new perceptions in the conscious mind, keeping them from being forgotten and then falling back underneath the water. Imposter syndrome is caused by a belief that's operating at the very deepest level of the unconscious. Beliefs are the mind's way of creating a model of the world. And when we have that model, then we can do things automatically. This saves the brain energy so that we don't have to be constantly thinking about every little thing. Beliefs nearer the surface in our unconscious mind tend to be more fluid. They might change more easily. They might come and go, come into the consciousness and back down again. As you get deeper into the unconscious, there are more foundational beliefs that don't change very often, and we're more certain about them, and we hold them for longer, like beliefs about religion and politics and what's the best football team. The belief that drives imposter syndrome is right at the very bottom of the iceberg, at the deepest level of our unconscious. It's an identity level belief, who we are and who we believe ourselves to be. And imposter syndrome is driven by a belief in our worth, that our worth as a human being depends on what we do. Now, this belief about our worth can be changed, but it needs very specific tools rooted in the neuroscience of how the mind works. So it's clear that these surface level mindset and affirmation techniques aren't going to have an impact on this deep foundational identity level belief that drives imposter syndrome. Now, what can make things even worse for your client is if you try them with them and they don't work. Well, they won't work. And your client might assume that it's their fault, that there's something wrong with them. And this actually feeds into the imposter syndrome belief that they're not quite good enough. There must be something wrong with them. If you'd like to learn the right tools to get rid of imposter syndrome in your clients for good, click the link here to get more details.